Working Cows Podcast, episode 312. This episode is brought to you by Sunshine Bible Academy. This episode is also brought to you by Ranch Right, LLC.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the C90 Ocean Minerals Studios. And this episode is brought to you by Ranch Right, LLC. There are 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and paperwork. Ranch Right, LLC can help you avoid one of them. If you're a successful business, you're probably paying some taxes, but that doesn't mean you have to be stuck inside preparing your paperwork for the accountant. Enlist the team of financial experts at Ranch Right LLC to get you back outside doing more of what you love. They are committed to providing you with actionable financials so that you can build a profitable business and create generational wealth. While some things in life are inevitable, being mystified by your numbers doesn't have to be one of them. If you are ready to entrust the paperwork to a team that actually enjoys this type of stuff, then visit ranchrightlLC.com and get back outside to doing more of what you enjoy. Very excited to be joined today, or to share with you today, an interview that my wife and I did at our kitchen table with Lynn Hoover. Lynn is from Ocean Blue Agronomics, and we're going to talk to him today about all-natural herd and land health improvements, and how what we can do to avoid just defaulting to commercial fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides as far as our land is concerned, and as far as our animals are concerned. What are some of the things that are available to us? How do we approach some of these things? And so really excited to share with you this interview. Now, you will notice had some issues with the sound equipment that I was using to record this impromptu interview and this an impromptu episode. So if you notice some of that, sorry about that, but this is what we were able to capture sitting at my kitchen table. I didn't have everything that I usually have when I know we're going to do an episode going forward. So I kind of patched this together with some of the old equipment that I've had for a long time, and the recording software and the interface weren't cooperating very well. So just apologies for that on the front end. But here is my conversation with my wife, my beautiful wife, Miranda, and Lynn Hoover at my kitchen table. Lynn, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
Thanks for the opportunity again, Clay.
Glad to have Miranda here too.
Hello. I'm tagging along.
Sitting in at the kitchen table. Lynn came out from Oklahoma, came up today from southwest South Dakota, and stopped in on his way to North Dakota. So been making the rounds, and just got a chance to go out and look at some of our place and see some of the things that we're trying here and some of the things we're doing. So, okay. Just kind of get your sense of this neighborhood and what you've seen on this trip as you've come from. You say East Central Kansas?
Oklahoma.
Oh, East Central Oklahoma up through Nebraska, Kansas. What's kind of been your sense of how the country looks?
Well, so for this year, I mean, it's raining for once, so that's a blessing. It's probably the greenest it's been in a while. I mean, at least for as long as I've been running around out here, it's nice and green. The row crops look good. The pastures overall look really good, and so hopefully it'll be a good year for a lot of ranchers and farmers.
Yeah, has been for us.
We're so thankful to see it green. I just can't even.
Yeah, I told you, I said I never really count on moisture in this part of the world from about the 4th of July through the end of August, and so we're usually brown by now, so it's kind of fun to be green this late.
We usually have the fire rig hooked up, and we haven't even pumped the tire back up. So
yeah, usually your run into somebody's fire they started while they were trying to get the last few hay bales.
Right.
So I guess as we walked around today, one of the things that I noticed that you were talking about was kind of all natural options for, just the challenges that we face, whether it's from a agronomy perspective or from a herd health perspective. And so thought maybe we just have a conversation around some of those options that you're aware of and some of the things that you've tried that have worked and different things like that.
Yeah. So in an effort to not just, use chemical right away, I mean, for fly control, obviously, like, garlic minerals, sulfur blocks are good. Like C90 that you're using has the garlic minerals in it. However, it depends on the cattle's rate of consumption of how effective it is. And so sometimes, depending on your situation, you still may want to reach for some, surface applied things. Diatomaceous earth, can be good across their backs. There's another product that it's like natural oils and that type of stuff. Is called fly swatter. I've seen guys use that and it works good. I mean, it's kind of a natural oil spray. Keep off flies, that works well. So yeah, just some of them kind of things if you're trying to keep your dung beetles and your other natural predators around. So we try to just not use the chemicals if we can by all means get away from it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at.
That's a major benefit, I think, too. Just even for our family milk cow, I don't want to pour a bunch of chemical on her if we're drinking milk. So
yeah, right, because it's right in the milk.
Right.
So as far as consumption on the C90 garlic, have you seen people enticed to that to get more consumption or anything like that? Or does that kind of sometimes shoot yourself in the foot? You undo what you're trying to do with the garlic or...
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of guys will just put it out there. I mean, I know some guys like to use enticer, and I mean, I guess could be okay. However, I mean, just different soil types, weather patterns, grass types, time of year, all make that big difference of how hard an animal is going to work. Any mineral box really, and so you just kind of got to be observant, know your region, and all that, and if you feel you need to do something to entice it, then that could be good. If you are, like I do know some guys have some type of really small ration. If you can incorporate it in there, then it's guaranteed that they're eating it.
Right.
So there's different options and different ways to go about it.
If they thought like we did, we were standing downwind from our last pallet load of garlic salt, and my dad and I were standing downwind from it, and he's like, geez, that would taste so good on a steak right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if cows thought like we did, they wouldn't need...
Yeah, right.
Sorry, I could tell you were trying to think about something.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's good. What are some of the, from an agronomy perspective, what are some of the all-natural options that you have used or seen work well?
So the biggest thing agronomically is you got to have your soils, just the whole biology really alive. There's a biological product I really, hang my hat on. It does a fantastic job. It's called Pro Soil. That one does a really good job. And basically the other thing is then just the mineralization of the soil, like C90, whether you're doing the foliar spray or if you can do the dry spread, whatever, works for your operation, both physically and financially. The more calcium and phosphate that you can get to come available, which takes a lot of fungal biological activity, the more minerals and correct sugars and proteins that are in that grass plant, which then in turn makes the cow healthier. And, I've even attributed just in my observation of different operations based on their quality of grass and management, that alone, poorer quality feed can actually make more bugs happen on the back of a cow that is, and compared to more correctly grown mineralized grass, which that's pretty impressive, I think.
And that's one of the things I wonder about with like enticing to certain products. Like I've had people tell me, one part table sugar to 1 part salt. And I don't know if that messes with their pH balance or not, but I know that that's a big part of the fly load is the pH balance. And so when I talked to Steve Kenyon about all natural parasite control on like episode 36 or over 200 episodes from there, but I think his first rule is proper grazing and then proper diet, and then if those two things don't fix it, then you can move on to some of these external applications or amending what they're eating. But you're talking about the mineralized soil producing better quality forage, and that's a big part of this parasite load that those animals are dealing with. If they're in balance, if their pH is right, or maybe there's other things going into what makes that work, but it's a big part of it is what they're eating.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've seen like, and this will be kind of crossing over to the dairy side, but I mean, depending on what you're feeding even the dairy cows, I mean, you can see differences on, the fly loads and just, working, eating on their backs versus not, and so, I mean, it would only translate over to the beef side as well, depending on what's going in the front end. Yeah, so I mean, the more mineralized, and I'll use the word correctly, grown your forage and feed stuffs are, and by correctly I mean good minerals from like C90 mineral salts coming up through the grasses, good calcium and correct phosphate availability is a big one. Your excessive potassiums, and we know this from watching alfalfas especially, your excessive potassiums can attract bugs to the cow the same as it does to the plant in the field. And so, I mean, that's one thing I've, been able to learn and, even benchmark a little bit. So, and the thing that's really neat about the whole mineral salt thing is like C90. I mean, that will, if your soil does need potassium and you're out there spreading it in a pasture-based setting, it will what they call transmutate and create the needed potassium that plant needs. So just because you're not applying potassium to a growing crop doesn't mean you're lacking. I mean, there's other ways to get where you're going that's better.
Right. Yep. And so, like, I don't know if you've seen the book Soil Owner's Manual by John Stika, I think, Stika.
I haven't run into that one.
I think he's actually out of the Burleigh County, as Judge Jessup from the South Dakota Grassland Coalition calls it, the Burleigh County Mafia, which is around where Gabe Brown is in Burleigh County, North Dakota, Bismarck, North Dakota, and they're kind of famous, and they actually do host a really great grazing conference every year up there and stuff like that. But I think John was in that area anyways, and might have been with NRCS, but he wrote a book called Soil Owner's Manual, and it's got a picture of a cow, and then underneath it, it's got another reflection of that cow below the soil, but it's all filled with microbes and roots and different things like that. And basically kind of what you're saying is, there's things going on under the soil, and those relationships, if we can get them in balance, they're going to produce better quality forage, and it's going to interact with that cow in a different way so that she's not as stressed out and needing other things supplemented or other things poured on her to make her, able to fend off the flies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I just like that picture. It's on the front cover of the book, which is sometimes about all the more of a book I get to take in is the idea from the front cover or the title. But
right.
It's a short book worth a read. It'll be in the show notes page for today at workingcows.net/312. Workingcows.net/312 is the show notes page for today, so you can go there and find that book, and we'll have links to how to get a hold of Lynn as well. But yeah, some more on some of those, just getting those mineral relationships right. What are some of the, you talked about C90 and some of those things. Is that C90 that we're feeding to the cattle, is some of that coming through? I know somebody said one time if we were designing a cow, she'd be 100% efficient, but she's more like 20% efficient, like 80% is passing through. So is some of that just the fact that we're feeding C90 and some of those products, is that helping pass some of that through and do good things too in your experience? Have you seen that work?
Yes, absolutely. And thankfully by God's design, the cows ain't 100%
right,
efficient,
right.
Or else we would have no return. But yes, no, there is always pass through, which is good. So if you got that going into your cows as their mineral system, you're helping your own pastures and ecosystem there on your own, farm or ranch. So absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And so what are some of the ways that we can, anything from good grazing management to other soil amendments or anything like that, but what are some of the ways that we should be thinking about getting these underground relationships established and fixed?
So, one thing is if you can offer the C90 as a free choice in the mineral box among whatever else you're doing, and then if there's ever opportunity, and I know, ranching is very different every part of the country, some terrain's very rough and some is not so much, But if you can ever get whether it's a spray plane or a ground rig across, I mean, spraying that 3 pounds of C90 is really good. Will do a lot for your soil and your actually grass crop. If you want to go even further, the dry spread is obviously you're delivering the most amount of minerals, for the dollar spent. And then also, depending on your soil, enzyme-based biological, that pro soil product you keep hearing me mention. I mean, that's really important because the more alive the soil is, the more the minerals can work for you, and then also it's going to move that available calcium and phosphate to form even higher energy grass, which is going to be, net energy maintenance. If you're, in milk, making milk, and if you're gaining cattle, it's going to be better, background gains. So.
Sure. And so how are you approaching the spreading of the C90 in the different ways? So the foliar or the spraying it on or the dry spread. So what kind of is your approach when you're doing the liquid spray?
So on the liquid spray, we have a dry product. It's called foliar mineralizer that can be dissolved. You can dissolve that one and then, spray it through a sprayer. There's also another, it's already pre-liquefied. It's called liquid mineral concentrate. So if you don't want to take the time or have the time to dissolve, it's already pre-done for you. It comes in totes. Mm-hmm. And then on the dry spread, I mean, it's, a lot like your dry commercial fertilizers. I mean, the best way to spread it's with those pull-behind carts, or self-propelled rigs, depends on what your resources are. But those are the two ones that work the best to, go out there and dry spread it and get your most amount of minerals for, the volume that you're putting out. So. Yeah,
we did it with a three-point hitch on ours when we spread it on ours.
Dry spread is what we used. The only question we had was we had sprayed first and then put it on. Is there a certain order you would?
Not necessarily. I mean, just really, anytime the ground, as long as it's not frozen, is pretty much go time. And obviously when you're working in the world of biology, any lead time, you can have any product down before you put your new seed in the ground or, as grass breaks dormancy. That's always the best time.
In some cases it was 15 minutes. In other cases it was 24 hours. So.
At least it was lead time.
We're terrible farmers.
Yeah. I had to beg, borrow, and steal everything I had for farming. So it was kind of, we got it done when we could get it done. But
now, is that something I recommend yearly reapplying, or should that hold over till next year?
So if you want to be really scientific, a good soil test is good.
Sure.
However, at these conservative rates we're trying to apply, a yearly application, it would be good. You can have some skip years in there, I'm sure, depending on your situation and resources. But yeah, soil tests, we really, tell the true story. So.
Right. And the 3 pounds of foliar mineralizer per acre, that's the rate that you recommend that?
Yeah, three as high as 5. And that one there, you could do that blindly with no soil testing whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And that could be done yearly or even, multiple times in a growing season. Depends on your goals and weather and water resources.
And what's the time of year that you would recommend that? Anytime?
Yeah, the foliar, as the grass breaks dormancy in the spring, or once you get down into even May or June, you do it again. Mm-hmm. So it has a little bit of a wide window.
Sure. And the dry spread earlier?
Yeah, dry spread. I like to see that either as grass breaks dormancy or in the fall. The fall before it freezes up is when grass is setting it's putting its carbohydrates down to its roots. It's setting the stage for the next growing season. So anything you do in the fall to not abuse your grass or overgraze or overharvest is storing up for a better next growing season, regardless of whatever the weather wants to bring at us. So you're going to be sitting better.
Mm. Let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor today, Sunshine Bible Academy.
My name is Kayla Hinman. I graduated from Sunshine in 2002. Also married one of my classmates, Craig, and we have 5 kids who I have homeschooled from the start. And we chose to send Abby, my oldest, mostly due to our experience at Sunshine together. The staff, the community and the friends that we developed, we felt like it would be a good transition for Abby as she left our house and went out into the world in a safe place, maybe to make mistakes with people who would help correct them in a way that maybe a parent can't. We've also developed friendships with staff while we were here that has transitioned into deeper fellowship as we've gotten older, and they've helped raise our kids while they're here. We do plan to send the other ones also, Lord willing, and it's really fun for us to come, sporting events or auctions or anything that we can get together and have deeper fellowship with other families that have also made the sacrifice to send their child here as well.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit more about that fall, how important that fall season is for setting you up for the next year.
So I would say the fall, I'm going to say the 4 weeks before the first, good hard freeze, and it puts your cold season grasses, frost ain't going to shut them down, but your freeze that shuts you down is where you want to be watching for your cold seasons. That is actually the most critical time in a farmer or rancher that's doing any type of grass or forage production. That is the single most important, time period that's setting the stage for the next year. So that's when you don't want to overgraze. You don't want to be taking that last hay crop and it's trying to regrow, 10 days and and it just finally freezes and shuts everything down because you're using up all your stored sugars and carbohydrates that the next year when it's springtime comes, even if it rains, you don't have the energy reserve under your feet that's going to give you good pasture or good hay meadows.
So that's critical time for moisture. You get moisture coming in at that time, and it's going to really set you up for the next year. We saw that here 2 years ago. We had a couple of inches of rain in September, and then we had a wet spring to start that year. And really, I don't know if it was 6 or 8 inches of moisture total between those two events, and definitely on the low side of that. And it was better than this year. We had more production than this year because we were set up to start the spring right, and we got early moisture, and that made a huge difference for us. So just where we're at and the
Timely
cool
moisture.
season grasses that we have, it's just different.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But yeah, so as far as, and then you mentioned also Pro Soil, and is that a liquid product?
Yes, that's a liquid product as well, yes. And so that needs to be sprayed out, with the sprayer, or it can be sprayed with a plane as well.
Mm-hmm. And same kind of deal as far as timing and those things?
Yes, exact same timing as everything we've already discussed, absolutely. Yep.
Sure. And how is that product working?
It's working really good. It's a really low application rate. It's a pint per acre. So the biggest thing is it's going to move phosphorus. That phosphate, when you move phosphate, every nutrient enters the plant in the phosphate form with the exception of nitrogen. And so when you start moving phosphate, that's how you start really moving your minerals, your sugars, your energy, and I even call it your correct protein structures into that plant for your best gains and feed efficiencies.
And what's the mechanism on the C90 side? How is that one working? You said potassium, is that right?
So yes, it will. So your sea mineral salts are going to do a good job of replacing and transmutating, creating the needed potassium without actually looking for it. Also is really good at calcium mobility. And there's a small percentage of the rumen can even make its own calcium with the mineral salts. And then also, like in the soil side of it, it does a fantastic job of feeding the mycorrhiza fungi. Is a great fuel source for that, which is our phosphate and water managers. And then also the thing that's really exciting about the C90 Ocean Minerals is it's a great fuel source for the Azobacter bacteria, those bacteria strains that can harvest nitrogen out of the air.
Right, and there's, I don't know how many tons of nitrogen above every acre of the earth in the atmosphere, so we don't need to apply it if we can just harvest it from the atmosphere, right?
Absolutely. Yep, that's the way. Yes, absolutely.
What are some of your other favorite natural products or things that you have seen work well as from the agronomy perspective or the animal health perspective?
So I'd say the biggest thing, the most important, among many, but so calcium in your soil, and I should really emphasize available calcium, determines your total volume of yield. That's for grass, for rate of gain, milk production, egg production, whatever you're doing, grain production. That is what's determining your total volume of yield. Calcium is so important. It's even been said by an old timer that it directly correlates to the money that's in a farmer or rancher's bank account. So that's pretty huge.
Well, what's the available calcium? How's that different from, I mean, you could find calcium on a soil test, but it wouldn't necessarily be available?
Correct. So calcium can be we call it a lazy nutrient. It's there, but it's only going to work if we got enough soil life to make it move. By chemistry, the salt will help make it move, as well as, sulfurs and stuff can as well by chemistry. Calcium and phosphorus need a lot of just biological life or digestion, if you will, to actually move. And to truly benchmark your availability, that's where you get into some of these, fancier soil tests like Haney's and some of these other, fancy tests to see how much is actually available. But by a regular test, I mean, kind of some benchmark is, calcium. I always go off the CEC of the soil test.
Cation exchange.
Yes. Because, for instance, a 5 CEC soil can't hold as much as a 15 or 25, respectively. And so we kind of target, I kind of have a target of 270 to 300 pounds of calcium per CEC. That's kind of a good, safe window to be at. And if that's right, then I like to see my sodium on that percent base saturation to be really at least 1% is the floor, but 3% is actually better. Because the higher that number is, without being excessive, that's going to be fertilizer efficiency, nutrient holding ability. It's going to be rate of gain in your cattle. It's going to be better crop production with less commercial inputs to get where you're going.
And are there things that you would do, or ways to bridge the gap to get there, or things that you've seen work better than another to get the calcium where it needs to be? Is it a natural process? It'll get there if your management's right, or how?
So the neatest thing I've ever been able to benchmark so far to date is when we get our biology of our soil really alive and going with like that ProSoil product, and then we come in with a dry spread of C90 with all that, I call it the fuel source to really, feed it and make it go extra good. I've actually seen it recharge calciums in the soil, which to me is really exciting because, that's huge because when you're, sometimes way out here, if you can recharge what's already there, that's better than dragging a line buggy. And way cheaper.
Yeah, I think that's so much of it, so much of the nutrient game that we've been playing in agriculture is we've been selling people nutrients that were already in their soil if they just had all the other relationships right underground, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and soil's meant to, be, regenerative, just by God's design. That's how he built this thing to run. And so the better we can, have a comprehension on that, because see, once you start being able to understand how to recharge calcium's energy, now you start recharging your phosphorus, your potassium, all your traces, your mag, and you actually start sequestering carbon into the soil as well, whether that's, winter or, probably the ground's not froze, but, you're going to be sequestering carbon and building organic matter, summertime, fall, spring, and that carbon plays a big role on water holding capacity as well as just the yield that's land acre is going to give us.
Just that we're trying to be the good guys. That carbon word.
Yeah.
We're trying to be the good guys.
What do you mean?
We want to capture carbon. The world wants us to capture carbon, so we're attempting to do that.
Farmers and ranchers do it best.
Naturally.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, they don't have to build a huge pipeline and steal land from people to get it done.
Yeah.
Am I not supposed to say that out loud?
It's a very natural process. It really is.
Right. But they're other places they're paying people to build pipelines to shoot carbon into the ground, where, like you said, God designed a system where that carbon cycles. Yeah. And you build a pump that will pump carbon into the ground as the soil comes alive every spring and comes out looking for those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So
it really, in my mind, the carbon cycle is just like the water cycle. it needs to rain and go down into aquifers and rivers and streams and, evaporate and come back and do it again. Really, that's how the carbon cycle needs to happen as well.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the 4 ecosystem processes, right? The water cycle, the nutrient cycle, the solar cycle, and one more. I don't know. But anyways, they're all linked and all connected.
Yeah, they're interconnected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And our management is the biggest thing. You know, I mean, we were looking today at crested wheatgrass that came in the 30s probably, and it was Russian crested wheatgrass. It didn't come from this neighborhood originally, you know, and we've been trying to figure out how to manage that resource ever since, because it plays out so early in the spring and or you know, in the early summer or whatever. It plays out and it's kind of done for the year, and so you got to get on it and use it when it's good, and then or put it in a hay bale. Otherwise, it's not going to be very helpful through the winter, like the native grasses that it replaced. You know,
Right.
And so those are kind of the things that you have seen work well as far as natural options to reboot and to get those things going in tandem with good grazing and some of those things.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And were you using those products in Pennsylvania as well?
Yes, I've been using these products for over 15 years. And then, now that I've been in Oklahoma, I mean, for 6 or 7. So, and I just have a little place there, and it was a, worn out cotton and peanut farm. And the local ranchers didn't want any cattle on there because it just wouldn't support any because of sandburrs, just, hardly no grass. And so, between the ProSoil product and dry spread and the C minerals, the C90, we keep slowly rebuilding that land and soil, and more grass keeps coming. And I'm kind of just taking it slow because I just want to really see what's possible. So I'm trying to sit on my hands and not use commercial because I just really want to see what'll happen. And I got myself in a position that it is what it is, so I can patiently wait.
Right.
And but it's really regenning very well, and I've had some comments from some locals that they're pretty excited to see what they're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, fairly different neighborhoods as far as Pennsylvania to Oklahoma, and seeing these things work
absolutely
consistently. And I suppose that's kind of a symptom of the fact that all of our soils are lacking the same, they're all in kind of the same position, given agriculture over the last few decades has been kind of a similar approach. And so it's left the soils kind of similar across the country and short on some of these things, like you've been talking about, calcium and those things.
Yeah, absolutely. There's obviously differences east to west and north to south, based on, the weather and the pHs and just different than natural. But yeah, a lot of the same, as you said, the same farm practices are very similar, coast to coast in this country. And so, you start running into similar problems, all over the place. So.
Right. And so have you been seeing a succession process take place on your place there in Oklahoma?
Yeah, absolutely. Like with them sandburrs, I was determined to not touch them with chemical because I just wanted to see if it was possible to get rid of them. And so, yes, they are succeeding, which is pretty impressive because it was just about solid sandburrs, and now we're down to, I'm going to say by percentages, there might be 15% of them left, which, to me, that's pretty intriguing. That's pretty neat to just see, Yeah,
so. What, 5 or 6 years you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like it went straight from sandburrs to the native grasses that were there 200 years ago.
Correct. Yeah. No, it's a slow transition, and then you always got weather playing to do, like the dryness that we've been having here for the last year or two. That slows down your progression, and now that it's raining, that I think speeds some things up because you actually got some green stuff growing again.
Yeah, 1 step forward, 2 steps back sometimes.
Yeah.
2 steps forward, 1 step back, depending on how severe the drought is. I think that's a big part of it is patience, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Not because it's easy, to go out and to buy the whatever,
Yeah.
But if you have the patience, I think that the long-term return on investment is going to be worth it.
Yeah, it is. The patience, the perseverance, and being, very, confident that you're trending the right direction. And if you have them 3 things together, it's going to work out well.
Yeah. what has been some of the tools that you've used to maintain confidence that you're training in the right direction? Have you done any tests or transects, taking pictures, those kinds of things?
So basically, yeah, I mean, you always got pictures, and then, there is, soil tests. I mean, you can see things happening there. But really, I mean, I still say the greatest test is good observation. And, I really like the livestock perspective because, livestock, whether it's sheep, goats, cattle, whatever, I mean, they tell us, they're talking to us, quote unquote, if you will, by their actions, their behavior, their contentment or lack thereof. Their, what minerals, are they working in a mineral box or are they not? Just all those behavior things. Another thing is, are they craving, molasses and molasses tubs? I mean, that's a big one. If you got your sugars and minerals right in your forages, they'll walk on by them. Mm-hmm. And so there's all kinds of things and signals that, we can observe with our livestock, and just, kind of listen to what they're telling us. And, if they're saying this still ain't right, then you just continue to work and you'll get where you're going.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's one reason to have some of those other things out in the pastures is to see what, what are they really going after? What are they content to do without?
Yeah, and don't beat yourself up. I mean, if it ain't just working as fast as you think. I mean, because like I said, there's weather patterns that slow us down. There's just other things. It's just a time factor. And then the third thing is just, just be, confident with your, circle of contacts that, you're trending the right direction and just, let it work for you.
Patience is waiting 4 years to see a dung beetle and then watching your children lose their mind when they get to see dung beetles roll poop across the ground.
Rolling dung beetles. We've been seeing
dwellers.
The dwellers. And I don't know if you see the tunnelers that much, I guess, but we've been seeing the dwellers from the first couple weeks we turned cattle out here. But
we only have a few minutes, so we need to pick on Clay. I want to know what you thought of the fly load out there today.
Flies on the cattle? Were there more or less?
There was, I would say it wasn't hateful, but it wasn't quite as low as I was hoping to see,
Sure.
But here again, that's one of them things, let's not give up on what we're doing.
Right.
And,
we have specifically asked people not to treat before they come in. So yeah, in hopes that we can
pour on or anything before you come.
Direct.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you just keep on doing what you're doing, and like sometimes when like my steers get that bad, if I can get them in a crowd and if they're not real spooky, which they might be a little bit the first time, but mine, I can walk through them and just kind of sling a little bit of DE across their backs and just always try to stand upwind. Right. Try not to breathe all that in.
Let it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very fine.
The wind will help you too.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very fine particles. I don't think
But sometimes just doing that will just disrupt the flies enough that it gives them, a week or two or three of break even,
Right. Because I don't think I've ever seen flies this bad, like on our sheep, as they are this year.
Rain, this being wetter makes, I know our place just, it's been wetter than normal, and it's the flies are, like our little dairy barn, I'll go in on the floor and just fling a little around just because it'll disrupt them, and then, it'll you can actually tell that it drops the load for a couple of days.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fairly inexpensive too to make this earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it has good soil benefit too.
Yeah.
And if they eat it, it helps them worm.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
There's really no
It's a
negatives.
win all around. Yeah.
Yep. Good stuff.
Good.
Yeah. I don't know. Anything else? How should we tell people to get a hold of you?
I guess my phone number is my best way.
Okay.
717-580-1458.
He's living on the edge.
Yeah, I'm living on the edge with that one. And then email is my name, Lynn, lynn.h@oceanblueagronomics.com.
Okay.
So, that's my email. So that's the best way to get a hold of me.
All right. We'll have both of those in the links at the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/312. So you can go there and get a hold of Lynn and talk to him about any of this or other questions regarding C90 and Pro Soil and some of those things. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Lynn, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Clay. Really appreciated the pasture walk and lunch and just time together.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me tag along.
Thanks for lunch.
Yeah, thanks, Miranda.
Certainly.
Very good stuff there with Lynn. Really appreciate him and his perspective. Really looking forward to this episode next week We'll be talking to Marissa Talsma of Bumblebee Apothecary, and we're going to take a little bit different approach on this episode. We're going to talk about human health as it's connected to sea salt and some of those things. C90 Ocean Minerals is launching a product on the human health side with their Baja Gold sea salt, and it's something that we've been using at my house for a couple of years now, and really appreciate and enjoy the product and the flavors that it brings. But we're going to talk to Marissa about the human side of sea salt and some of those things. And so looking forward to sharing that conversation with you, coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.